OpenNet, your personal connection with your government, is made possible by the North Carolina Cable Telecommunications Association and the state of North Carolina. Thanks also to North Carolina cable operators for bringing OpenNet to their viewers in almost 400 communities across the state as a public service.
Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for being here today. We very much appreciate it. Now, we're talking, as you know, about business and education, and what we'd like to do with this time is to hear your thoughts on a number of issues that are going to be central to the conversations that we're going to have during the course of this NC Works series. So first, I'd like us to take a broad view of the issue. Now, as the state rebuilds its economy, it's likely that our business community is going to change in some ways. So at the same time, we have to consider the possibility of redefining public education to better serve the needs of this new business environment. So the question is, what kinds of changes do you think that we need to see in public education to meet the needs of this new North Carolina business climate? And then we can look down the road a little farther after we address that and maybe look at what public education or K-20 system in total really needs to be successful and relevant in this 21st century. So let's look at the first part of it first. The business climate is changing. How does education need to change to meet the needs of that business community?
I believe you need to prepare the workforce to be in a position to go to work. Now, how do we do that? We certainly get all that we can out of the student within what he or she has. Certainly today, technologies, engineering, medicine, math, science, these are available jobs that we can see and we know we need. Small business people in general need good workers who are highly trained to do whatever is commanded at that time, depending on what they make, what they provide. In the public schools, we have to see that kids that are not ready for college are prepared to go in the vast field of work in technical training that they may need, whatever that field may be. Those who are prepared to go into engineering or medicine or the sciences and the maths, we need to make certain that those programs are available in the community colleges and the universities. So the whole session will be pointed to the generation of jobs to a large extent, so we can drive down the unemployment numbers that we have. So it's about education in all three areas, the community, university, and public and private schools. Okay. So it's jobs and more jobs.
Okay. Do you agree, Speaker Hackney?
I do. The recession that we're in currently has accelerated the transformation of our economy. I think most folks agree. We continue to lose manufacturing jobs, although we have a lot of manufacturing still in this state. But in all sectors of our economy, increased training, education is important. And I think it's important to the future of North Carolina's economy that we provide that increased level of training. Our economy is moving toward biotech, pharmaceuticals, finance, high-tech computer skills, research, medicine. All those things require a high level of education. North Carolina, in the midst of the recession even, has been relatively successful in recruiting and adding jobs in many of those areas. Certainly not in finance, but in many of those other areas, so we have been able to do that. One part of this that we must not lose sight of is that our graduation rate from high school is not where it should be in North Carolina or in most other states as well. If we are to succeed as an economy, we need to use all the talent that we have and get all the talent that we have educated. We need more resources on dropout prevention, more resources on making sure our kids graduate. Because they need to go on to community college, technical college, university to participate fully in the economy that we're preparing for. Our whole, on both sides, House and Senate, our whole emphasis in this recession has been to bring North Carolina through the recession in a way with our core educational functions strong, so that we can be better prepared than other states, other nations to take advantage of the opportunities of the new economy. I think in large part we're doing that. Certainly that preparing for those jobs of the future will be a focus of this short session as well.
Okay. And you brought up one of the greatest challenges that you see to that successful education environment, and that is the graduation rate and preventing dropout. Let's talk about that for a few moments. That's one major challenge. Do you agree that's a major challenge? And can you gentlemen share with us some of the others that you'd like to see addressed in this session and even moving forward beyond this session?
Well, a third of our children that enter high school will never graduate in North Carolina. So that is obvious, a serious problem that we have. If you do not build the economy back stronger than what we see, those numbers will only increase. Not having at home the revenues necessary to raise your children make it much more difficult. So someone else has to step in and help. Yes, we need to change that. Joe has worked for some years now to make certain revenues are available to design and find ways to keep children interested in public education.
These efforts are ongoing. We have in place a system of dropout prevention grants across North Carolina where local communities propose what they're going to do, and we give them a little bit of state funding to follow through with it. But at the end of the day, the teachers, the principals, the folks in the schools need to find a way, perhaps with these additional resources that we talked about, to interest the kids in something, whether it's baseball or electronics or rocks or birds or whatever it is, to find that that nugget of interest that keeps them in school. Because as Senator Basnight has described well, without staying in school and an opportunity then to advance, those people, they can't provide for their families as well. They perhaps can't provide health insurance for themselves, and they become some of our most vulnerable citizens. We can avoid that. We need to put an emphasis there to, and an additional emphasis to make sure the graduation rate goes up. There are school districts in this state where the graduation rate has gone up fairly dramatically. So we know we're learning some of the things that work, and we need to replicate those across the state.
And some folks, and you mentioned just now that it's important on a societal level to address the dropout rate, that it's not just a matter of an individual choice. And let's back up and talk about that for a moment in a little greater depth, because some folks watching might think to themselves, well, it's not my problem if somebody isn't motivated enough to do what they need to do and stay in school. And maybe you can help us understand how this is a public policy issue, an issue important to the entirety of the community. Expand on it a little.
Well, it would be all of us to our benefit to have everyone productive and doing well. But with broken families as we have, it cannot be just the state of North Carolina repairing the difficulties we have. It has to be the church, the community, the town, the village. Everyone would have to participate. With no family in many cases with children, and that's what they are, they have no chance. If you come to school and expect the teacher and the teacher only to raise that child, that will not occur. The community will have to be more deeply involved.
Okay.
The dropout rate, the graduation rate, is related to crime. It's related to our economic advancement as a North Carolina economy. It's related to the next generation of education, because we all know that folks who graduate from high school have a greater and go on to some further education have a greater ability to raise kids who are better educated and to help them along. It's related to our medical safety net. So it's so important for our future economy, and it does require our attention.
We just do not do the kind of job we need to do to be able to compete in the international economy that has changed so dramatically. Our kids have to be able to do much more than they've done in the past. In America, our schools are not what they should be in the high school area and elementary where you start. Our competition is mainly China, India, and the European community. We have to make certain we strengthen our universities in the fields of engineering, medicine, technologies. Accounting is critical, and Joe mentioned financial training. Where we have the advantage in this world economy is our universities and our training in our community colleges. We have got to make certain this year and next year and the future allows for that expansion in those fields where we can create the kind of innovation that will create jobs that the world community needs. We not got to do better at the university level than we're presently doing.
There are parts of our state where I was recently in a poor rural county of North Carolina where the graduation rate had gone up by about 10%. Just working at it and really adding community resources to school resources. There are ways to reach these kids, and we really need to make sure that those efforts are being made.
Just a moment ago, too, you were talking about how within the high schools in particular, and then some programs in the university system need to be strengthened to better compete internationally. And there are some schools that are having success in boosting the graduation rate, so presumably they're making some changes to reach that kind of success. What kinds of changes do you think we're talking about? And are they changes that would be replicable in a variety of North Carolina communities, or are we looking for very specific community-driven changes, or maybe a little bit of both? Help us understand what you would love to see that look like.
Math and science. You have the vacancies now in America, in North Carolina. We have to recruit engineers and scientists from other areas of the world because we do not produce enough. So you have to build the buildings, hire the faculty, and not a normal faculty. You have to secure the best in the world. If you want to be the best, you've got to teach and train those people who have the capacity to do so. So hopefully they start a business. It's about jobs. If you train people who are incompetent when they graduate to do certain jobs, if you only have worker bees who are not highly trained, you will not have the kind of companies and businesses that you want. You got to have many of those high-paying jobs that are the nucleus of growth and good growth in any community anywhere. You've got to do a lot more in these sciences.
Okay.
One of the things that North Carolina has done right over the years is that we have provided in North Carolina an opportunity for any child who wants to go at reasonable cost on past high school to further their education. We have a great system of community colleges all throughout the state, close by every student. We have a great public university system. We need to protect it. It's in danger in this recession of some damage because of the lack of money that we're experiencing right now. But it's been a place where our children in North Carolina can go and advance as far as they want to go. We have private universities in this state which are abundant and available as well. So those resources are available. And in most cases at pretty reasonable cost. We're a low tuition state, so our children have been able to go to college at very low cost compared to other states. That's an advantage that North Carolina has. We don't want to lose that. Back to the graduation rate, if we can get more kids into that system, into the community colleges, into the universities to prepare and train for those jobs that Senator Basnight talks about, then we will continue to prosper as a state and as an economy.
But it does cost money to pay for the student when he enters the community college or the university. If he elects to go to the public school, our reimbursement rate or charge that we accept in North Carolina is larger than anyone I'm aware of in this country, much less the Southeast. So we have to have the resources for each and every new student who we want, but we're in a catch-22. You have to educate, but where do you find the money to subsidize that child? If you go to UNC Chapel Hill, it may cost $6,000 tuition and fees, but you'll pay probably about $12,000 more that the taxpayers will pick up for that stay with that student. Now it goes down gradually with the other schools, but not by much. If you went to Virginia, UVA, it would be $15,000 versus $6,000. Engineering at UNC Charlotte would be about 4,000 undergraduate. At Clemson, about 14,000. We are paying huge sums of money to make certain these students do get a quality education, but we have been taking resources away from these schools in alarming numbers. So somehow, I believe, to build that economy, to build that future, to compete with the world, you're going to have to reverse this negative flow and build back those resources in the universities and community colleges. You cannot continue on the track that we're on if we're going to provide for a very competitive education.
I recently, Fran, had a CEO in my office here in Raleigh, a big company. I think 5 years ago they had no employees in North Carolina, and now they have several thousand. And I said to him, why North Carolina? Why did you come to North Carolina? He said, for a talented and educated workforce. That's the reason they come. That's the reason those several thousand jobs exist. And we're talking today about the convergence between business and education. One of those convergences is this. The business community in this state has been willing to support a system of higher education on a low tuition, relatively higher taxpayer participation and lower student participation. The business community has been willing to support that throughout the decades, to build a community college system, and the business community's been willing to pay the freight. That's paid off. We have a great community college system. We have a great university system. We have good public schools in North Carolina. And so those are some of the choices that lie ahead for us as we confront a recessionary economy. I'm very optimistic about this economy. Our unemployment rate is beginning to tick down. Retail sales are coming up. Auto sales are coming up. Home sales are coming up. I think construction will begin to pick up soon. I think by the end of this year we'll be well on our way out of this recession again. But it's tough right now, no question. People in North Carolina are hurting. Many people without jobs, many people living just a few dollars day to day. It's very difficult for all of us in North Carolina right now.
And we've talked at great length then about the connection between the business community and education in North Carolina. And in the context of those decades of support, do you feel that the support from the business community either needs to or will take a different shape or play a larger role in supporting both the community college and university systems as well as K-12 education? What do you see in the future if you had your crystal ball and your druthers?
I'm not sure what else you can do. I am a small business owner. You support the schools in any way you can, but you're starving for effective workers who have good attitudes and who want to get up and go to work. That is a bit of a problem in a seasonal environment like I live in. So when you get away from the coast or the mountains or tourism, wherever it may be, you get incredible support by the business community in the community colleges, public schools where I live. All of us give as best we can. But it all comes back to me, to the family early on. And with that focus that I'm going to work, I'm going to do all I can within my abilities. And then the business community and North Carolina as government does all it can. I believe you need more jobs in North Carolina. You need them badly, and in America. How do you get those? You compete worldwide. How can you compete worldwide? You make something that the world needs, and you make it here and you sell it. You market your abilities to design. We have energy companies that have moved in outside and in Charlotte from around the world because of our emphasis on energy at UNC, Charlotte, Duke Power, other companies as well. But we have to train. These businesses need us right now to graduate engineers, and then when you come back to other parts of North Carolina, you find that the biosciences, the biotechnologies are ripe for investment, but you have to have that trained worker or that worker that you can train. Can businesses do more? And we as individuals, certainly we can. But it is a very, very difficult climate for many companies in America. So we have to shift our focus into that area of science, technology, and math. We have to graduate more in our high schools, but if we do that, we have to have slots and facilities in our schools. Last night in Greenville, Paul Cunningham, the new dean of the School of Medicine at ECU, has rightly explained to us that we have no doctors to fill the vacancies and the needs in medicine in North Carolina today. And many of our medical schools in the health science field, they go to work outside of North Carolina. So we have to open up the slots. We have a very, very serious funding problem for our universities today. And we cannot grow that economy without that high-profile worker.
We have, I mentioned earlier, fits with what Senator Basnight is saying. We've been adding a lot of jobs in the technology sector. Particularly, I think we're told that now we have more than 50,000 biotech workers in North Carolina. These are high-skilled, high-paying, by and large, jobs. We have one of those in Pittsburgh, in Chatham County, in my district, very successful. So we need to provide a public education system, a community college system, and a university system that feeds that economy. And I think we have the basics in place. We have a way for a talented kid to go into these areas. But we need to make sure, going back to what we started off with, we need to make sure that some interest is sparked, somebody reaches the kid to give the kid what he or she needs to move forward, to take the next step. Maybe it's a hard step. Maybe it's they're held back by poverty or a bad situation at home or whatever. But to get on a track, to get into those jobs that we will be filling in the future in North Carolina that are good paying and provide a good living for one's family. So it all fits together, and we're trying very hard to put all the pieces in place, and I guess more importantly in this economy to keep them in place when we're having declining revenues as we've had the past year or two.
Gentlemen, I have one more question. We haven't talked so much about the community college system in particular, and there's been indication that it's critical, obviously, to the education environment in North Carolina so that the economy can move forward. But there's also an enormous amount of discussion about how the demand on the community college system surges when the economy declines. Do you see in the next session that you all will have an opportunity to address the community college system specifically in the context of this nexus?
Well, you couldn't leave them out. You would have no economy whatsoever. They don't only provide the baker and the plumber, the training for the electrical contractor, the heating and air, the crafts that we have that are so important in the mountains of North Carolina, and the worker for whatever field it may be that supports the small business owner, as well as the breeding and starting ground for that scientist, for that doctor, for that lawyer, for whatever you may become after starting in your local community with 2 years of education or more right there, and online at home and in high school. You can get a big jump start on whatever that educational dream may be. But they need instruments, they need labs, they need tools, they need equipment, and they need salaries for a growing faculty. So their money needs are extreme. When we talk about a growing state, with that becomes an obligation to educate the children, the new student. And North Carolina is growing. So we have a serious money problem in funding the needs of education for the businesses of North Carolina. The small business owner needs competent, well-skilled workers, and the community colleges and universities and high schools furnish those workers. The trades are so critical to the welfare of our personal economy.
Community colleges are key, and it is very difficult when they are exploding in their student growth in a time of recession and our revenues are declining. It's a difficult situation for us, but it is very important that we keep them strong. We have lots of high school students now in the early college program who are taking community college courses. That's the spark they need to keep going, to move on ahead. Our community college system and our university system are working together seamlessly now. The community colleges, in many cases where a student is not prepared, doesn't want to go off to a college or university right away, they can do the initial part of their college education at a local community college where it's easier to pay the tuition, it's easier to get there, it's easier to perhaps hold a part-time job while you're doing it. So it's a wonderful feeder system for our colleges and universities, and many of those students go on to great things, to advanced degrees and all sorts of things. So it's a very key part of our education continuum in North Carolina. They do a great job. They also are well equipped to do very specific jobs, like if a particular industry is coming in to The community colleges can do the training for the workers. That's happened over and over in North Carolina. We don't give them enough money to do that in the way that they are capable of doing if they had more money, because it does, as Senator Basnight said, it takes equipment, it takes expensive equipment in some cases, but it's necessary to train those workers for those high-tech jobs.
Gentlemen, before we close out the hour or our conversation for today, if you had one message that you'd like to share with folks who are watching, they're preparing to engage in this conversation about business and education, whether it would be a question that you would pose to the general public or a thought that you would like to share with them about this critical aspect of public life in North Carolina, what would you like that one closing thought to be?
Well, let me say this. A world-class university system, a well-funded community college system, and an excellent public school system will propel North Carolina ahead of other states, ahead of other countries in the world, into the jobs of the next decades ahead. We can choose not to do that, or we can choose to do it. We've been making the investments, I think, that indicates our choice is to move North Carolina ahead, to prepare the kids that we have today for those jobs. We could certainly make a choice not to do it, but it's not a choice I want us to make. And I hope the people of North Carolina will continue to support us as we move North Carolina ahead in meeting these educational challenges.
Joe spoke well on that subject. I'll move to the infrastructure. And to the people of North Carolina, I would have to say we have to be awfully conscious of the water and sewer and energy needs of North Carolina. Businesses have to have a clean environment and a cheap or as cheap as possible energy source, as well as the consumer. And that cannot hold true with fossil fuels only as the major source of developing energy, because of the pollution associated with the burning of fossil fuels. That's why we need to, as quickly as possible, find new sources of energy for our future. Our roads in North Carolina are in a deteriorating state. The rural areas cannot grow without roads. The urban areas cannot stand the level of congestion that is occurring in our cities. So sources of revenues will have to be addressed by somebody at some time, and the quicker the better that should occur, and in a civil way that we all fully understand that it does have to occur.
And we have to keep the physical integrity of our state strong. This has been done over the years by our predecessors in these offices. We have not in North Carolina mortgaged our buildings for current revenues. We've not mortgaged our lottery revenues into the future. We've not sold our state parks. We have a AAA bond rating. We've not overborrowed. North Carolina is physically in pretty good shape, considering the recession and considering the times we're in. We balance the budget every single year, and we do it in a way that exhibits fiscal integrity. So while we do all these good things for North Carolina and prepare for the future, we have to keep North Carolina's reputation strong for good fiscal management. I think we will do that.